Hi, my name is Amy. Thank you very much for watching, and let's do the best that we can with the information that we have at the time. This is for entertainment purposes only, so if you're entertained, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Today I'd like to talk about MSTX and all of the drama that's been happening surrounding it. So if you don't know, MSTX is a 2x of the MicroStrategy, and they started out their life as a 1.75x of MicroStrategy, and I really liked that over MSTU, which was the 2x of MicroStrategy, because half of the battle with the stock market is to minimize your drawdowns. So I was happier with MSTX than MSTU, but then they changed, and I believe it was in October, to being just 2x. And then, even more recently, sometime, I believe it was in December, the clearinghouses stopped giving them the volume of swaps that they needed. And the reason for that is because it is the most volatile stock. MicroStrategy is the most volatile stock in the S&P 500, and they are not comfortable handling that much volatility. So that left MSTX and MSTU in a bind. And since their prospectus is they get a 2x goal every single day, they've had to resort to things like call spreads and other things just to get in the ballpark of a 2x return, which isn't perfect, which is why people have noticed that there's a little bit of a decoupling between MSTU and MSTX and MicroStrategy, but that is what that is. And then, Michael Saylor decided that he really needed to sell a bunch of shares at the market, which diluted the shares, which made December, which was red anyway, even worse for the shareholders in the short term. But so we had all that happening, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, MSTX announced a dividend. Oh my gosh, you would think that the world has ended. Why would you do that? It's a 2x leverage. And I just wanted to tell people to calm down. Because, before you invest in these things, you ought to go on these websites. And I was coming from, when I was looking at other ones, MVDL, if you go to their distribution calendar, in December 2023, they had a $10 per share dividend, which is why I picked MVDL over MVDU, because if you're doing the 2x game and you get stuck with shares, at least at the end of the year, you'd be getting like a 12% distribution, which I thought was nice. But you use high income for high income, and you use 2x leverage for growth, and they're not the same thing. So I can see why, if people knew that there was going to be a distribution, they would choose MSTU over MSTX. But if you look at the MSTU website and you go down to the distribution section, they only have one, and they never actually filled it out. So to me, that didn't seem like they would pay a distribution. They just had to have it in there. But for MSTX, if you go down to their distribution section, they fill it out every quarter. And this is just the first one that they had a distribution. So when I was looking at MSTX versus MSTU, I do have two MSTX shares, because I was like, well, if they pay a dividend, I think they might have a dividend more than MSTU. And also at the time, MSTU was $150 and MSTX was like $90. So it was cheaper to own, and they're both 2x, so there wasn't really a big difference. So now that we have MSTX and we know that it pays a dividend, it's up to you for next year to decide, do I want to be in a 2x that at the end of the year I will get a distribution, which is around 12%, or do I want to go with MSTU, which just uses that to keep their NAV stable? So, we really shouldn't be that surprised. Like, they've been trying, usually swaps don't generate that much income, but because they've had to switch to using like synthetic and long calls and like actual options, of course they've been generating premiums. And so they probably had tax reasons why they had to pass those savings on to us. So I think that if you, well, this is totalrealreturns.com, and I am not sponsored. I just happen to like using their website. And from September, if you'd put $10,000 into all of these, MSTU, you would have the most money. That's still not 2x. And you shouldn't invest in these thinking that you'll actually get double the underlying. But like 1.35%, or like 1.35 times is really not that bad. And then MSTX, because it started as a 1.75%, I think this time next year we'll have a better comparison, because we'll be able to use them both like when they're both 2x, and just make sure like they should have a closer total return next year because they're both 2x. And then of course you have MicroStrategies, and then MSTY. I can't even feel bad that I would have $17,000 instead of $21,000, because I've been getting, and you can look at it, 150% distribution for the last 5 or 6 months. Like, it's been pretty ridiculous. So like is this sustainable? I don't know, but the distributions range from just under $1 to $4 and almost $4.50. So it just depends on how volatile Misty is, or MicroStrategies is, and how good the managers are at winning their bets. So, and if you don't want to get a capped experience, take a little bit of your distribution and invest in MicroStrategies, or take a bit and invest in MSTU or MSTX. And like, for me, for the leverage stuff and the option plays, I was really happy doing puts on MSTX, and I put it far enough out of the money that I never actually like owned MSTX shares. However, MSTU had a 10-to-1 forward split, and so they started out $17, and I bought a few shares because, well, I bought a few hundred shares because I wanted to do cover calls on them. And what happened with MSTX was I was eyeing it at $25, and then it shot up to, it was like $100, $150. I was like, oh, I can't do a contract on that now because that's too expensive. So I didn't want the same thing to happen with MSTU while it was, down closer to orbit. And now it is at $8, which is like, okay, well, I bought it at $17 and now it's $8. Should I bail out? Like, no, I'm buying more at $8 because that's $800 for 100 shares. And if I can get $100 of premium from $800 of collateral, like I'm going to do that. So, I'm hoping that the crypto winter doesn't start until the summer, after I have finished paying off my 0% interest credit cards. And that's a trajectory that we're on. And you know what? It's not the worst thing, because people have been noticing that MicroStrategies is also decoupling from Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin was up, but MicroStrategies was down. And if MicroStrategies can remain volatile, even if Bitcoin is trading sideways and the volatility of Bitcoin isn't as much, then that is amazing for MicroStrategy holders. So, long story short, too long didn't read. I think people that are upset at MSTX for having a dividend are a little bit ridiculous, and that since neither MSTU nor MSTX are 1 year old, we should have had that as a risk in our mind of they could have a distribution and that will lower my shares. I do understand that people were upset that had puts out They had sold puts on MSTX, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's $14 cheaper. Like, that's not fair. But I think that the brokers actually adjusted the price of the options that were out down to adjust for the dividend, which was nice of them, because when the distributions happen, the NAV falls by that amount, and if you didn't have that in your radar as something that could have happened, then you would have been caught flat-footed, and now you have to buy MSTX at a more expensive price than what you were expecting. So anyways, are you in Misty? Do you believe in MicroStrategy? Do you think that we'll be able to get our volatility and keep it up over until the summer? I'm not actually recommending that anybody invest in MSTU or MSTX. They're just the ones that I happen to like to trade with and have been paying attention to. Leverage ETFs have their own dangers, and you're really not supposed to hold them in the long term, but I do. So anyways, I'll talk to you later. Bye.